Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for taking time to join us today. My name is Joseph Puckett. I'm the co-founder of Wiggins Coaching, and I'm super blessed and fortunate today to introduce you to an awesome partner, Wendy Schaefer from the Omnia Group. We've been working together now for a couple years, and you guys work with many of our agencies and your powerful programs. So y'all get ready to take tons and tons and tons of notes. There is a little link on the chat that says learn more about Omnia. Click here to check them out. Y'all, you can fill out that little form, see what it's like to do their survey and their assessments, see what the results look like yourself. You're going to be shocked. Wendy, I got to be honest with you. I felt super, super weird reading my own report because I was like, how do they know all this about me? I only answered like 20 questions or 30 questions. How do they know all this about me? It is such a powerful tool for recruiting, but also with your existing team. Y'all, I cannot endorse Omnia Group and their programs enough. So I want to encourage you to check them out today. But with that said, I'm going to pass the mic over to Wendy so she can go through this presentation on how to identify top talent and bring them onto the team. Wendy, thank you for your time today. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here. This is one of my favorite sessions. So I'm super excited to get this going. And I'm working with the new software too. So
yes.
And it went away.
Make sure we get it going.
Oh no, my slides are gone.
The slides are not showing?
No.
Okay, don't worry. I'll edit this out of the video.
I'm going to get it. I figured it out.
Got it. Okay.
I think I hit the wrong button. Sorry, everyone.
You look good. Let's roll.
Okay. So today we're going to talk about mastering the art and science of identifying top talent. My name is Wendy Schaefer. As Joseph said, I've been with Omnia for 25 years, and I just gulp to say 25 years. Started out as an analyst. So if anybody out there is familiar with the assessment, you get various report types back. And I started off writing those reports. So quite a bit ago. And I'm not hitting the right button. So I thought we'd have some fun with this and play a little game. There's a bunch of cups of coffee sort of hidden throughout the presentation. If you kind of remember, like a la Where's Waldo? So go ahead and just count those coffee cups up. Some of them are tricky, so I have some tick marks. I was going to say get a free assessment, whoever wins, but we're giving a free assessment to everyone. So you're just going to have bragging rights, but I think that's pretty cool. Some are embedded in there, some I've sort of hidden. And we were just talking about work from home. And I live in a very kind of small bungalow type of house. So I've got a puppy that's in the back bedroom, Kong, peanut butter, the whole 9 yards. However, I actually heard him barking on my last presentation and it came through on the recording and I was mortified. So I'm like, well, let me just put up a little disclaimer here just in case. But I think I've cracked the code and he is going to be quiet for this presentation. Fingers crossed. So let's talk about what we're going to go over. And there's so much. So if I start to talk too fast, just say, hey, Wendy, slow down. I'm taking some notes. We can give you the presentation. We can send that out, of course. And if you have any questions, I think, Joseph, you're going to be monitoring the chat. Just tell me if someone raises their hand or types a question in there or wants to talk. That would be great. And I will take a breath and stop and answer the question. So what we're going to talk about today is the cost and consequences of a bad hire. So what does it mean when we hire someone that doesn't work out? What does it mean, cost money-wise? What does it mean culture-wise, morale, all of the things we'll talk about there. And then what are some of the common barriers to hiring? Because we all sort of fall into sometimes some bad habits, especially if we lose a key employee and we're in a hurry to get that position filled. What are some of the barriers and drawbacks to, identifying top talent or not letting ourselves do that? And then also, of course, how to use personality traits to hire effectively. That's what Omnia is all about, is behavioral science and using data and tools to make better decisions and just more quality decisions. And then what are some best practices? And this is just great. I hope that there's a lot of new nuggets in here, how to set up a process, interview questions and strategies. We also have a session that's a little more in-depth about interviewing, but I'm really going to try to pack it full of stuff that hopefully is just a reminder, a refresher, and then some new nuggets. So first off, cost of a bad hire, what does that mean? And everybody's, I'm sure, heard this statistic. It's about an average of 30% of that hire's salary, which is just incredible. And averages, of course, some are going to be more, some are going to be less. It depends on the size of your organization, the position. So sometimes it can just hurt so much, not only from a money perspective, but from what it's going to do to your team if you lose somebody, and maybe you're operating pretty lean. And we'll talk about that. But what's really interesting to me is that this statistic is a Harvard Business Review states that 80% of employee turnover is related to bad hiring. I just went, oh my, 80%? That's high. So if we can just make less, fewer bad hires, we can reduce turnover automatically. Now, we're not ever going to get rid of turnover completely. I mean, as human beings, we're complicated, we're emotional, we're messy. We've got a lot of things going on in our lives, right? We relocate, we have changes in our lives. So it's, never realistic to expect that you're not going to have turnover. And some turnover is good too, right? Get some young blood into an agency. People retire, they're passing on their knowledge. So that's great. But when it's related to a bad hire, it tends to be pretty painful because it's unexpected, or you've put so much time and energy into selecting that person, and then you got to start all over again. So this is just one of my favorite images because we go into an interview and that candidate is putting on a show. They're trying to impress you. They're trying to answer those questions. And we know that there's just so much on the internet, right, about how to ace an interview and how to answer those behavioral interview questions. Sometimes those resumes are fiction. And so if we're just going based on the resume and we look at that, and we're like, oh my gosh, I got to meet this person. Then they come into the interview and you just have a strong personal connection. And it just is like, oh my gosh, this person is going to be a superstar. They're ready to conquer the world. And then 3 months later, sometimes we have this. And this is just another, to me, super powerful image because you've got this person who clearly isn't pulling their weight. And that's fine. Well, it's not fine. Nobody wants to have somebody not pulling their weight. But what I find very interesting is what it's doing to the team. Like if you look at the looks on their faces, they are clearly unhappy. And that's another cost of a bad hire, right? Because you've got people who are then irritated by this person who's not pulling their weight. They're picking up the slack. And as a manager, an agency owner, you're having to deal with all of those repercussions. Somebody who's not doing their own job, but causing other people not to do theirs, and they're, upset. And, those 3 people might be A players who are going to get irritated the longer this guy stays. And then you could lose a good person as well. So that's just the ripple effects, right, of hiring somebody who doesn't work out. I feel like I'm not staying on the slides long enough. Don't forget the game.
Wait, quick chat. Who thinks they know the answer? Don't give the answer. Who thinks they know? Like, by the way, this is the cutest engagement idea I've ever heard of. Who thinks they know the answer? Send a chat, but don't tell us how many. I've lost count already, Wendy. I'm sorry.
Oh no, you're not. Count. It's the total at the end. It's
right.
Full of coffee cups. So keep.
Oh my gosh. Keep going. I love it. It's super cute.
Okay. So what does constitute a good hire? What does this person have to be a great hire? We want skills. We want desire. That's, work ethic. They're excited by the industry. They want to get out there and do well. They're motivated depending on the job they're in. I talk a lot about producers because that's really a pain point for agencies, of course, hiring for sales. And so, they have to have that motivation to sell, and how you're paying those people, commission-based, all of that. So that's that personal desire. And then personality fit, which we're going to talk a lot about. And then, of course, culture fit. Do they fit in with your environment? And that's a really great thing to think about is, what is your culture like? Is it formal, analytical? Is it more social, work hard, play hard situation? Because you want to make sure that that individual is going to fit in. And so all of these things go into making a great hire. Also, what type of experience are you looking for? What type of education are you looking for? And that's such a multifaceted thing. When you're bringing in a person, there's so much to us, right? That has to go into being successful. And so really what I want to talk about here is using tools and gathering information to make the best possible hire. Because if you're just relying on a resume screen and an interview, you're losing out on a lot of information that you could be collecting to make the best possible hire. And we're going to talk about some of those barriers. So getting into barrier number one, and this is the one that we're just all guilty of, and it's compromising. And compromising for whatever reason, right? Sometimes it's you lose a person and that role is just critical. Nobody else can do it. I know sometimes in our company with a marketing position that we have, when we lose that person, we have to fill it right away. I mean, but of course it needs to be a good candidate. So when you're compromising because you have to hire quickly or because you just really like the person, you're like, oh, I'm not going to do XYZ steps because I just feel this personal connection. So for whatever reason that you might be compromising, just take a moment, take a breath, step back and go, wait a second, I need to follow my guidelines. And of course, that's the solution that we're talking about is know what you need and know what you want. And this is so critical. And this is, of course, having a clear position description that you're going to share with the candidate and, of course, with your team. So, everybody knows what we're looking for. But you want to have a list of what does this person have to have when they walk through the door of the agency, because you don't have time to train for it or, and they need to be up and running. Just day one, what skills do you need for this person? And then what do you want? Like, what are the nice to haves? Like, it would be great if this person coming in knew Salesforce, but if they don't, we'll show them how. So you want to have your nice to haves and your must haves very clearly delineated. It will help you to not compromise, because it's just so easy when you like somebody a lot and they're missing something that's critical and you're like, oh, we can teach it. But you don't have time to teach it, or that they need to know this right out of the gate. And I'm personally guilty of this situation. So I always do this 2-column. What do I have to have? What do I think would be nice to have? So barrier number 2 is relying on your gut. And I kind of like ironic because I chose an image here that says trust your gut, because the gut is one of your tools, and we want to have all of the tools that we're using. The more tools that you use to make a decision, the better off you'll be. So, trust it in a way, but don't rely on it. It shouldn't be your only decision maker, because if you've been in the business for, like I've been in the personality assessment business for 25 years. So I'm pretty good at hiring analysts. I'm not so great at hiring salespeople, so it's not my area of expertise. I'm not in that sales role. But I do have a little bit of a gut instinct of what type of person is going to be great for sitting at a computer and concentrating on writing reports all day. So definitely listen to it, but don't rely on it, because it isn't the more scientific data that you use and objective data that you use in conjunction with some subjective data makes it just a more robust picture of that individual. I keep talking about the solution while I'm still on the barrier slide, so I get so excited. So the solution is to use all of the data at your disposal. And of course, don't forget drinking lots of coffee. If you don't know, I love coffee. I could drink it all day, but I'd never sleep a wink. So all of the data at your disposal. The resume screen is important, of course, because you're going to use that during the interview. You're going to, ask questions based on that historical reference, that piece of paper where they're talking about their education, they're talking about their skills, they're talking about their work experience and history. So you'll get a lot of questions that you can ask to verify the resume. Also, the interview process itself, and we're going to go over that hiring pie at the end, but the interviews are key. That's where you're going to get some of that gut reaction, where you're going to be able to see face to face what that body language, the way that they answer a question in conjunction with what they're actually saying. And we'll talk about how to ask some great questions too. So the more data that you have, the better off you'll be. And then, of course, personality data, because that's what we talk about here. How to use personality data to understand who it is you're hiring. And the great thing about personality is personality is it's fixed within us. It's who we are. So if you think about, your children, for example, maybe if you have 2 or 3 kids, that those kids have their own personalities that they're just born with naturally. You might have a little social extrovert in the group, somebody who's really analytical, loves puzzles and problem solving, one who's shy and quiet, one who's more outgoing. So by really understanding what those personality drivers are in a candidate, it helps you to see how well they're going to fit into the position. And just by knowing that, you're getting some understanding of that person before getting to know them, like working with them day in, day out. Because some of this information you don't get until you've known somebody for a few months. So you don't know that they're really competitive, or they're shy and reserved, or they're very detail oriented until you've been working with them for a while. But the great thing about personality data is that you're getting that insight in advance, which is really nice. So it allows you to make more objective hiring decisions. So for example, if you're interviewing somebody who is super friendly and you're just hitting it off, you've got a lot in common, that friendliness can sometimes look like assertive confidence. So social confidence, can look like competitive assertive confidence. And the problem is if you're hiring a salesperson and you see social confidence and think that it's assertive confidence, you could get somebody on board who at the end of the day struggles to negotiate boldly, struggles to ask for the close, might not have a lot of resilience for managing rejection and getting on to the next opportunity. So we can really separate that social confidence with the assertive confidence. And I'm also getting ahead of myself because we're going to talk about that. It helps you to uncover potential challenges so that you know where to develop and train, and then also assess their fit with the job. So the first thing that we measure is assertiveness. There's 4 personality dimensions that the Omnia assessment measures. Assertiveness, we have basically an 8-column bar graph, if you're familiar with the Omnia assessment. And all assessments will use sort of a different picture. They might use a circle, they might use colors, so we use numbers and columns. And that first columns 1 and 2 signify assertiveness. Now, assertiveness in our most recent validation study has the highest correlation to sales performance than any of the other traits. And that just makes total sense, because if you're assertive, competitive, win-driven, that means that you're going to be comfortable approaching prospects, negotiating, just being that bold, win-driven person who's comfortable taking risks. So this is one of the things that's just key, especially for an agency environment, is finding somebody who is sales oriented. So level of assertiveness, what we show, taller column 1s are those natural sales driven people, assertive, competitive, win-driven. So you'll see them in producer roles, leadership positions, anything where you have to be comfortable with a certain level of risk, conflict, confrontation, negotiation. So very action-oriented. Now, the other side of the coin is somebody who is more helpful, supportive, cautious, and non-confrontational. And those you would see in roles like customer service, administrative support, or maybe some individual contributor roles in, say, IT or accounting, where they're not in charge of generating business or leading other people. So they're helpful, they're supportive, they're cautious, but by no means really comfortable in a sales or leadership role. And then you can also have somebody, we measure degrees of behavior. So the taller a column 1 gets, the more assertive and aggressive and competitive someone will be. And the taller somebody's column 2 gets, the more cautious, supportive, and non-confrontational they'll be. Because there's really not just a one size fits all. You can have somebody who's assertive and proactive, and then somebody who's, and you've met them, especially in an agency environment, who's really hard charging competitive. So that's great information to know after you bring that person on board. So if this is great, they've got the assertiveness that we want to sell, they're competitive, they take charge, but maybe they're a little overbearing. That column 1 is really tall, and some of the things that we need to work on is just how to take a more subtle approach at times, how not to be too forceful with prospects. So it gives you some insight into that development and retention efforts too. Because the great thing about personality type is that we are who we are. And that's not going to change over time. So you can use this tool not only for selection, but through the entire employee life cycle. That information is going to be valid and good to use just to understand how to communicate and motivate an individual. So the next thing that we measure is sociability. And sociability is, are you more social or are you more reserved? Are you more expressive or analytical? And pardon me one moment. Excuse me. So our column 3s are our social extroverts. They're outgoing. They never met a stranger, right? They can go up to an individual, strike up a conversation, and they just have that natural poise for talking to people, building relationships, and nurturing those relationships. Column 4s, on the other hand, are more reserved and analytical. So there are those types that really like to just focus on something. They're comfortable in solitude, and they tend to gravitate towards tasks that are, oh, that looks good. Thank you. They gravitate towards tasks that are more heads down, if you will, and data-based. So, for example, I started at Omnia. I have a very tall column 4 as a report writer. So that's very quiet and analytical, and there isn't a lot of social interaction in that role, but I love it. So, and then your social expressive individuals are those that really want to be out talking to people. They're motivated by that interaction. They feel energized when they're talking to others, whereas 4s feel energized by processing information. So a lot of times you'll see 3s in producer type positions, of course. But one of the things I do like to talk about is that sales is the highest correlation to sales performance and sales success. Not sales is, assertiveness is. You're like, of course sales is. Assertiveness is the personality trait that is correlated directly to sales performance and high sales performance. What columns 3 and 4 will do when you've got that personality type is just kind of show you what their sales style is going to be, like what flavor they put on sales. So your 3s are going to be relational, upbeat. They're going to be great at the front end, breaking the ice, building a relationship, whereas your 4s are going to be more of that problem solver, consultative type of producer. And both can be wildly successful when they have that tall column 1 and that, that killer drive to close deals. So it's just a different style. Also, you'll see a lot of column 3s in customer service roles where they are interacting with people all day, like help desk support, for example, IT help desk support, and of course, a sales manager who needs to motivate the team. Some agency roles for column 4s. Again, also producer, also customer service rep. So again, it's just about the communication style that they put on the role. Operations, anything that needs to have a logistical, analytical slant to it, great for column 4s, account managers, and your service processors. So if you're using service processors who are, really doing the heads down paperwork, then a tall column 4 is a great fit for that role. And then we measure pace, and pace is about how comfortable somebody is adapting to change or dealing with a lot of heavy routine and repetition. So we break that out in columns 5 and 6. Your column 5s are your fast-paced, multitasking. They love change and variety, and they're very comfortable dealing with the unexpected. So as you can imagine, that is really a great fit for sales and management, where you really don't know what's going to come at you from day to day. If you're a producer with a full pipeline and you've got, you're going out on appointments and people are canceling or rescheduling, you want to have somebody who's really comfortable adjusting to that. Whereas your column 6s are your patient, methodical, one thing at a time kind of personality. So that's really great for account management roles, customer service, administrative support, accounting, where you've got somebody who really has that persistence for just, systematic tasks. A lot of IT roles do very well with the tall column 6. So that's pace. And, pace really doesn't affect sales performance either, but depending on your environment, your agency environment, you want to think about, would you rather have somebody who's faster paced or a little more methodical? So what, is your environment very hectic or is it more systematic? And then the last thing that we measure is column 7 and 8, and that's somebody's need for structure. And this one's pretty multi-dimensional. So your Tall column 7s are your independent, big picture people. This one is actually a key trait in sales as well, because it's where you get resilience. So that ability to brush off rejection and move on to the next opportunity with your confidence intact. And nobody likes, of course, nobody likes rejection. Column 7, column 8, nobody in the world likes to be rejected. But it's about what it does to you internally, and are you able to move forward to the next opportunity. So column 7s can do that. They have that built-in resilience. They tend to be big picture thinkers. They're innovative. They're confident. So that is really what, according to our validity study, which we knew this, is that you do want to have some measure of column 7 in a producer for brushing off rejection. So your taller column 8s are your detail-oriented, procedural structure type of people. What that means is, like, they're the ones that are going to dot every I, cross every T, verify information before moving forward. I always say 7s innovate and 8s verify. They like to make sure that they're doing things correctly, which is great in the customer service position, where they're getting the customer as they come in, and they're making sure that all of that paperwork is completed correctly, that you're in compliance with whatever rules that you need to follow. So they're the ones that are picking up that detail piece of it. Support, service, and some individual contributor roles, like in accounting and IT, where you have to have really strong attention to detail. But they have very low resilience. And I can say that because my 8 is literally through the roof. And just the thought of asking somebody to do something, it creates this anxiety that it's ridiculous. And even knowing it, that self-awareness piece, I just can't pick up the phone and sell something. So, it's just about, I think really with column 8s, they want to be right. They want to be perfect. And, in sales, you have to be comfortable with this. It's a numbers game too, right? So you have to be comfortable with a certain level of rejection in order to get that sale, to get the, to find the person that is going to be a great fit for you. A great, customer for your agency. I'm like thinking about the hire and the customers that you're bringing on board. So that's the last personality dimension that we measure, and showing how that fits into the agency rules and how it can really help you to determine if somebody is going to have that natural personality aptitude to do well. One thing I do also like to talk about is that, a personality tool measures those personality dimensions. It doesn't measure everything. So it doesn't measure hard skill. It doesn't measure education. It doesn't measure cognitive aptitude, whether somebody's got that problem-solving aptitude that you want. We actually have a cognitive assessment that we use. And then you want to use maybe some skills testing. If you're hiring an accountant, we like to give a little accounting test, make sure they understand debits from credits and how to, work a general ledger, things like that. So making sure that you're getting the skills that you need. So skills testing, personality testing, cognitive testing, all of those things will, go into making that perfect hire. So if you were just using a single tool, you're still missing out on all of the information, because no one single tool can give you all of it. So the more you use, the better off you'll be. One of the things you also can do is compare to top benchmarks. And the way that Omnia does that is we collect a job description from our clients, and we have them fill out a job questionnaire. We, of course, have our historical data to help build that benchmark with our clients. Like I was talking about, we just finished a validity study. So we know that a benchmark for sales should have a tall column 1. And we can talk about that and make sure that we're setting the benchmark correctly for your agency. And then also we can look at top performers. So you can have your top performers take an assessment, and we can run it through our benchmarking software to make sure that that benchmark aligns with, what we have as an industry standard compared to what might work for you. Perhaps you're in a market that's less competitive, more like neighborly. If it's a smaller town, maybe that column 3 can be a little taller than the column 1. And we talk about all of those variables with our clients to make sure that you're getting the benchmark that works best for you. Now, we work with insurance companies and agencies all of the time. So we have a great industry catalog, but I always like to make sure, and our service team does this, is talk to each client to make sure that that benchmark is going to work. And I mean, it should, especially the sales and assertiveness piece. So getting into the next barrier, does anybody have any questions? I'm going to just pop over to the chat here.
I've been monitoring the questions and the chats. Everybody's been asking, will the slides be available afterwards? So let me just go ahead and say yes, for CWC members, I'll put the slides. Wendy was kind enough to share these slides with me beforehand. I will have the slides along with the video up on the platform within about 2 to 3 hours. But really, really great stuff, Wendy. You can keep on rolling.
All right, let's do that. So the next barrier that we have is an inconsistent interview process. And that just means that you don't have a process that's written down that you're following every single time. We always hear, you know, consistency is key. And so the solution is, of course, to have a consistent process that you're following. And this is just an example of a process. So establishing your job criteria, which we talked about in the beginning, know what you want, know what you need, have a position description ready. You can use a position description in so many postings now too online. The great thing about online, I mean, I remember the day when we only used classified ads in the newspaper. I know I'm aging myself. And so you've got this little tiny box that you have to describe everything in, like, you know, 5 lines. So it's great that we can put all of that information online. You want to make sure that you're reviewing resumes in a consistent fashion and that you have a checklist of what you're looking for. On our website, we have a resource for how to do a good resume screen. And then a phone screen. I love a phone screen because I think it's such a time saver. That way, you know, especially for roles where the individual is going to be talking to your customers and your prospects on the phone, or through video chat or whatever it might be, to see if they've got that presence too. But it, you know, really saves you time from that in-person interview, if you're doing in-person interviews, to maybe just get rid of some of those, you know, people that are not going to be a fit. Some crazy things happen on phone screens. I once was interviewing an accounting individual, and they called from what sounded like a rock concert, and I was trying to tell her, I mean, I really can't hear you, it's so loud in the back room, you know, background, where are you? And she's like, oh, I'm just at home in, you know, my apartment. I was like, okay, it's really loud. It sounded like she's at a Guns N' Roses concert or something. So it's very interesting, you know, what you get. And I'd asked her even at FineLight if you could, you know, maybe go outside so I can hear you. But, you know, people don't always think about those things. So it's kind of nice to know, like, where their problem solving critical thinking is, just in a phone screen. Also, a lot of people will get, you know, some of that logistical stuff out of the way on a phone screen. Salary expectations. I mean, if you're miles apart, you know, that might save you a lot of time as well. So sometimes just whatever you think that you can cover in that phone screen, that saves people going to the very end of the process, and then you love somebody only to find out that there's one issue that you don't agree on. Maybe it's work from home. Somebody wants to only work from home, or they're comfortable with a hybrid environment, and you're only in the office. And now you've spent, you know, 4 interviews to find out that you're wildly apart on this non-negotiable topic for the both of you. So that's why I love a phone screen, of course. And then assessments and job testing, making sure that they have the skills that you need, hard skills. If you know that you need somebody who is an absolute master at Excel, give them an Excel test, or a master at creating PowerPoints, or a master at Salesforce, whatever it might be, go ahead and give them a test for that. I mean, even if sometimes it's just a little test that you create on your own, or there's testing, of course, that you can find online for hard skills. And then you've got the interviews. And conducting a great interview, that's a whole session in and of itself, and the types of questions to ask them. We'll go over a little bit of that. And then, of course, checking references and then making the job offer. So by following those steps, and you might have a couple others that you include in there, and doing it every time, really that protects you on so many different levels, because you're being consistent with everybody. We'll talk about too, the best time to give an assessment is before the first interview, sometimes even before the phone screen. At Omnia, you can give assessments, and there's no charge to take an assessment. So you can go to a job fair and give 100 assessments and then go, well, these were the 5 people I really liked, so now I want to see reports on these 5 people. The key is to do it, you know, to see those results at the same time for everyone in a particular role, so that you can show that consistency if anybody were to challenge you about your process. So that's the other great thing about consistency, is that you're doing it the same for everyone. And so if somebody does speak up, you can say, well, this, these are the rules that we follow. So the pre-screening process, have an outline, know your questions in advance. If you go into the interview and you don't know your questions and you're just kind of winging it, the candidate can really tell that. So make sure you have those questions ready to go. With the a second and a third interview, you might be designing those questions after the fact based on the challenge areas that you saw in a first interview. But your pre-screen and first interview, you should already have those questions written out in front of you. And then, of course, you want them to be job related. And we'll talk about behaviorally based. Okay, and so some interview strategies. One of the things that we talk about are some warm-up questions, just to get everybody loosened up and comfortable, some icebreaker questions. Tell me a little bit about yourself. Sometimes that one can be tricky if that's an icebreaker question. I use it, so I really like to see where people go with it. Sometimes I did have one person who went through his entire work history. He talked for 40 minutes on that question. So that can be problematic, but it told me a lot about, there was no noticing, the listener, the audience or anything, which was, he was a sales candidate. So it was good to see that perhaps he wasn't going to give his prospect an opportunity to chime in, ask questions and talk as well. So you can learn a lot from some of those warm-up questions. Make sure that you have some good workplace culture questions. I think it's really okay to talk about the position and what it requires, to make sure, almost like, I don't want to say scaring somebody off, but being clear about what it takes, so that if you've got somebody who, for example, in sales, assertiveness, the profile might say, yeah, they're assertive, but they're not as assertive as we think you want. But they're saying, yeah, I'm hard charging, I'm assertive, I'm competitive, I'm all these things. You want to make sure that you're telling them too, like, well, this is what the job is. It's making cold calls. It's negotiating. You have to meet your numbers in order, you don't meet your numbers for 2 months, we don't keep people on. Make sure they're understanding that if you're saying you can do this, this is what it's going to entail. So I love that transparency. Make sure you have the job specific behaviorally based questions. Behaviorally based questions are when you're asking people to draw back on their historical experience. So tell me about a time that you closed a difficult sale. Tell me about a time that you lost a sale. What happened? Why do you think it happened? What did you learn from it? So you're being very specific. The thing that I love about a behaviorally based question is that when somebody answers it, you can automatically tell if it's the level of detail that you need or if there's something missing. It's incredible when somebody answers a behaviorally based question, how the follow-up questions will just pop into your head. So if they're not giving you the result, if they're not telling you, answering part of the question, then you have those follow-up questions automatically. You can see the holes in a story and then get those, try to get them filled in. And sometimes people just answer those questions very superficially, and that can tell you a lot as well. Now, that's not to say there's not a place for traditional questions, yes, no questions, and, tell me about your strengths and things like that. There absolutely is. Like, really, with everything, you should use all the tools. I don't believe you should only do behaviorally based questions or only traditional questions. You should use a blend of both. And then also consider simulation. So one of the things that we use for our sales roles here, we sell a lot through presentation. So we do test presentation skills, and we have somebody put together a presentation of something that they're passionate about and then present to 5 people on our team. And so it's a great way to see their speaking style, what they come up with, what they talk about. If it's something that they're passionate about, you're going to see that energy, and are they going to bring that? Do they have the social poise and confidence that you're looking for the role? So simulations are great. So what are the best hiring practices? And that's what we've been really talking about this whole time, is just pulling together all of your resources. Don't rely on just one. With Omnia, we say with the personality type, you want it to be maybe 20 to 25% of your overall hiring decision. And that's because we don't measure everything. So we've got your core personality traits, but we don't measure intelligence. We don't measure work ethic. All of these things factor into success. Pardon me one moment. I had the flu like 3 weeks ago, and I cannot get rid of this tickle and cough in my throat. So I'm hoping it's eventually going to go away. Of course, the interview impression is so important. References, background checking, make sure they have the education that they say they have. I find it incredible the amount of things that people will lie about on a resume. I couldn't fathom the idea of saying I have a degree in something that I don't have a degree in and then need it for the job. And that's problematic. So there's also social media. And then, of course, we talked about background drug testing. If you do that, references can be a great tool. Really, the idea here is just using everything at your disposal. And I want to talk about kind of why that is. And this is a slide we use for the selection process. I also had a process. Your process could be different. You can insert anything in here. We talk about establishing the criteria, the resume review. It's similar to the other slide that we had, and sort of the steps that you'll follow. Again, I like to, when we say assessment after the phone screen, I like to give the assessment first thing, but not see the results until before maybe the first or second interview, depending on the tool that you use. And we walk all of our clients through that. But the whole point is increasing your hiring reliability. So this is, I know it's a weird image, but I just find it so powerful when somebody else explained this to me on cognitive aptitude. But when you don't use all of the tools at your disposal to make a hiring decision, you're going to be like the one on the left here, where you're going to hire A players in that yellow target range. Absolutely. But you're also going to be all over the place with B, C, or maybe people who are bad hires, who I'm assuming are in that sort of blue ring, or of course, totally outside of the mark altogether. There's just, you can't see everything. So the idea about more tools is to increase your reliability so that more often than not, you are hiring in that yellow and red target range. You're going to make more hires in that. But as you'll see, there's still some hires in the blue and even in the white, because we just can't see everything. So, there's going to be a person that's going to get by. That's just the reality of the situation, because people are, like we talked about before, we're complicated, we're multifaceted, we're going through a lot in our lives. And so you can very easily, make a misstep. But by using the tools, hopefully those missteps are a lot less than this graph on the left. And so I love that. That's what reliability is. And increasing the reliability means that you're hitting the mark more often than not. And so that brings us to, I've done this, I hope that's okay, 45 minutes instead of an hour. So I hope that you have questions. I would love to answer your questions. Also, this is the link for the free assessment if you haven't taken it. And so the drum roll is, how many cups of coffee did you get? If you said 21 before getting to this slide, but I also threw one onto this slide. So there's 22 total, including this last slide. So how many people did that? Did you get them? Let's see, I can see the chat. Just put that in the chat.
I'm not sure. They might be embarrassed to say I only counted 5, only counted 10. I lost count at like 10.
Well, I mean, hopefully the material was far more engaging for the team.
Jersey says me. Jersey says yes.
Good job. Because that was tricky. I had some analysts proof this for me and count the cups. And they're like, wait, I'm missing one.
Clay got 21. Scott Shoemake says I did too. Now we're doing the honor system right now, right? We're doing the honor system, you guys. Okay. So we're trusting you. So way to go, Jersey. That's awesome. And y'all, I've sent the chat out a couple times. She had the slide right here. Check out omniagroup.com/Craig-Wiggins-coaching. Feel free to reach out to Kether. You have Kether's email address there, ksnyder@omniagroup.com. These insights are truly, truly powerful. And it's not just for recruiting. Can you talk for just a quick minute on how they can use these assessments for their existing staff to make sure that they're in the right role, they're in the right position? We know how to coach and develop and motivate them to reach their full potential.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that happens in a workplace, of course, is communication is one of the biggest barriers to everybody. Just sort of understanding what what people are motivated by, what they're interested in. And it's because we often communicate very differently. So that's one of the reasons why I think a tool like this is so great for development and retention, is because you're understanding somebody's communication style. So if you're managing a team of introverts and maybe 2 extroverts, right? Those extroverts are going to require, public recognition and praise that might absolutely mortify your more analytical types. So it gives you that insight into how people want to be approached, how they want to be motivated, so that you can use that in any planning that you do, whether it's a performance review, a training session, a one-on-one, a coaching session. Understanding how to approach that person so that they're open and ready to really, have a great conversation or learn something new. A story I have to tell about personality type within Omnia is we had a new manager come on board, and she's overseeing our customer service team. And we have one individual. She is an amazing client service rep. She's super smart, so analytical, but she's very quiet and she's reserved. And so, this manager was just wanting to touch base, tell her how great she's doing. And she sent her an email, "Would you meet me in my office at like 2:00 so we can chat?" This sent her into an all day long tailspin, thinking that she was going to get fired, because nobody gets called into a manager's office at 2:00. I think it was a Friday, which is like the worst, right? And so it would have just been, great to give her a little more information. And some people are fine with that. Like, producer, "Hey, can you come by my office 2:00? Sure," or whatever, I'll be there. But, super analytical administrative assistant who's maybe cautious, shy, is going to think they're getting fired. And it's just so funny. It's just a little thing that can make all of the difference. So you can use it in so many different ways. It's great for meetings because analytical people need to know an agenda in advance. They need to know what sort of questions you're going to ask, what you want to talk about. They need to process it so that they can go in and participate. But if you don't share that until they come into the meeting, those people are going to be so quiet because they haven't had an opportunity to process. We're big picture, social people, assertive people, especially those 3 traits together, they don't require any time. You come in for a brainstorming session and they're raring to go, and they're going to take, they're going to have ideas, they're going to come up with things. And then those analytics are going to be like, why am I here? I didn't even know this is what we were going to do. So personality type just gives you that insight into how to interact just at a daily level with people. And then, of course, the motivation piece. How do people like to be motivated? Are they motivated by team-based goals or individual goals? Do they need to have a routine at work, or are they comfortable with, a dynamic change in activity? How much detail it needs to be involved? I'm sorry, I could go on and on. So like with 7 and 8s, a 7, I always say, when you're managing a tall column 7, you only need to give them a thimble full of information, a kitty size pool of information. But with a column 8, you want to give them an Olympic size swimming pool of information. So just knowing that helps as a manager to, retain and motivate and engage your team.
I think all of that is so important. And honestly, this tool to know how to manage your team, how to motivate them, how they work well with others, right? You might be able to identify where there might be some clashing. What's really cool about Omnia, and Craig just asked a question we get every time we do a webinar with y'all, a training session with y'all. I'll kind of give my answer, but then I'll let you give your answer. Craig said, "I'm currently using a similar program." I'll say it, called Ideal Traits. And how does Omnia compare or differ to Ideal Traits? Couple things. Great program. It's cookie cutter. Y'all. One size does not fit all. Would it surprise y'all to know that Beth Lambrecht, who on our team, when she took that assessment in 2013, would it surprise y'all to find out that she was I always forget. It's either a researcher or not perfectionist. It wasn't a sales leader, salesperson, whatever. I said, "Oh, shucks, y'all, I kind of liked Beth." Like, this is us just talking, right? Nobody's watching this. I really liked Beth, but she was rough around the edges, had never sold. She was working at a warehouse for the past 7 or 8 years doing quality assurance on a line. Young. I didn't give her a shot. Y'all, could you think about how terrible of a decision that would be? For those of you watching, like, who's Beth? Beth came on board with us in 2013, 2014, something like that. and was our top producer for years, still is the top producer at that agency. 2021 averaged 133 items a month, every month, 133. Last year was like 141 items a month. Yo, there's agencies that don't write 50 items in a month. She's cranking out 50 items some weeks. So I didn't hire her based on her assessment. Seriously, I was on the fence. I liked her. I was like, I can polish her. I can teach her sales. Oh, shucks. She didn't come back as a salesperson. I literally have the email. I can find it right now saying Beth Marthler was her last name. Then Beth Marthler, thank you so much for your interest in our company. At this time, we're going a different direction. I wish you the best in your future endeavors. How awful. Y'all, thank God. I thank the good Lord that she still wanted more for her life. She wanted out of that warehouse as a single mom, was tired of working second and third shifts. She wanted to get into insurance. So she went out and got her license on her very own and went to work at an agency with another carrier down the street. 6 months later, she sends me an email saying, Joseph, you and Craig are the biggest and the best. I want to work with you. Thank you for interviewing me a few months ago. I've been in insurance now for 5 months. Y'all, I was done. I was like, hired. Hey, she can fog a mirror and has a license. I'll hire her. I'll put her on. First month did 50-something items. Second month, 60-something items. Within a year, she's writing over 100 items a month. And since May of 2015, that was the first month she hit 100. Y'all, she hasn't missed it maybe 5 times. Maybe in those like 7 years. So I don't like to talk negatively about any other company. I'm just giving an experience. Idle Traits is nothing compared to Omnia. Nothing. What would you say about Omnia and how y'all might compare? Because there's other assessments out there. I forget what the other ones are called. There's some free ones out there, but like how accurate are they? I don't know. Talk about, your strengths at Omnia and how you guys can help these agents.
Yeah, I mean, and there's absolutely a lot of great tools out there, and they're based off of a similar science and methodology. But I think really what it boils down to is the level of customization that you can get out of an assessment. Because one thing is if anybody's trying to say that this assessment is going to solve all of your problems and you're going to hire perfectly every single time, then that's a red flag, because we really do try to talk about this as one tool in a big, wider picture. It doesn't tell you everything. So if we can just talk about what it does and how to incorporate that into your process to get the best value from it, to me, that's just better off for anybody, is to understand what it does, what its limitations are, so that you're using it perfectly. And that's really what I love about Omnia, is that we are open about where personality can take you and then what else you need to fill in. Also, we do I sort of changed trains of thought, as I tend to do. The customization piece is that we realize that there isn't always one perfect benchmark for a job, right? So we want to look at your top performers. What is your market like? Because it might be different from the industry standard. But even if it isn't, this is why it's, if everything else looks great. So Beth's profile, for example, is atypical for a producer role. That's okay. If everything else looks great, you take a chance on somebody because you saw she went out, she got her license, she was self-motivated, she came back to you and said, I'm going to do this. That's where some of your gut and experience comes in. You've seen some personal perseverance. Not a lot of people can do that when they are atypical for sales. Most people are going to just stop and they're going to give up and they're going to be done. And that's really playing the odds with an assessment. But when you see that diamond in the rough who pushes past their natural comfort zone, because the thing is as human beings, there isn't anything that can stop us. If I wanted to sell, truly wanted to sell, or I needed to feed my family, I could do it. So, but most people are just not going to do that. And I'm one of them. I'm not interested in that. It makes me very, anxious. I definitely am true to my personality type. But as people, we can persevere. And so when you find somebody who has that 1% that is going to go past their natural comfort zone and be successful, you want to grab them up, because they've got that grit, which is just a thing that the assessment really doesn't measure. That's so powerful. Most people want to play within their comfort zone, which is why a personality assessment can be so powerful, is because we're showing you what that comfort zone is so that you can place them in a role that plays to those strengths. But yes, if you find somebody who has that extra oomph, then that's like such a powerful thing. And, we think it's great, and it absolutely can happen. But you have to be careful, because if you hired 10 people with best personality type, probably only that one is going to work out, and that's best. So, yeah.
Sometimes y'all, you just got to give people a shot. And some of the best people that I've ever had, I kind of wanted to pass on. And, with their persistence and follow up with me, look, I'll give them a shot. Josephine, Century Club agent, she just branched out to do her own thing. She opened an independent agency. I'm super proud of her. She came to us as she was like a daycare teacher at a church that her husband was the pastor at, but she wanted more for herself and for her family. Interviewed for an admin position. And Stephanie was about to hire her as an admin. I met her. I said, no, you're not an administrative person. You should be a licensed agent. She was desperate for a job. She needed a job. You know what I told her? I said, go get your license. I'll give you 2 weeks, and I'll give you a much higher paying job where you'll do much better. And here's what, I'll pay you back for it. And I rarely did this, but I knew she needed it. I said, I'll pay you back. I'll pay you back on your first paycheck. I'll pay you like $300 or $400, whatever, for the cost of the pre-licensed material and all that stuff. She was our best CSR, moved to sales, became a Century Club agent. Now she started her own independent agency. It is doing super duper well. Wow. She wanted it more than me. Y'all, these people have to be self-driven. They got to want it more than you. Now, Scott asked a really good question about interview questions. This might be our last question.
Okay.
What are some interview questions that you like to ask? Any go-to questions before you answer? I want to mention to everybody watching, the CWC hiring process has our built-in interview guide, which is amazing. It's a couple pages long of how to break the ice, how to get to know them, how to position the opportunity, how to sell yourself, how to see if they're, they're selling themselves, how to pitch your comp plan, the whole thing. But I have a feeling Omnia can help y'all with interview questions too. Am I right?
Yes. And we actually have resources on our website. There's some free resources. We're at omnigroup.com. Go to our resource page and you can download a great behavioral interview guide. It has tons of questions. I always like, one of the ones that I do like to go to, that's my question that I always try to ask, especially for like a support or analyst rule, is tell me about a time that you made a mistake at work and what you learned from it and how you fixed it. So I really like for people to talk about not just their successes, but what happens when something went wrong and what they did with that. So I always feel like it's great to talk about the strengths and what are some of the struggles that you had, because it can really tell you a lot in how they managed that, and that they actually were introspective, they learned from it, and they got better from that, because we all make mistakes, right? And none of us are perfect. So I love to hear how somebody learned from a big error at work.
So a couple more things real quick. My friend Brett Baylor, who's also in my program, I work with him and his awesome team. He wants to know about pricing. So the website doesn't really say pricing. Y'all do have a standard package for CWC members, but y'all, they can also customize packages. They can like take assessments of your current team members that are doing really, really well, see how they score and rank, create ways that you can identify other people that are like them. So it's not just that other company that has one cookie cutter thing. They can customize stuff for y'all. But my friend Brett, who I also work with, would you mind sharing like what y'all do, like the standard package is, not the custom one?
And I think Jamie is on this.
Jamie's
on. Is she? Because she's in our sales area, so she knows that damn well. Well, we do have packages based on what report type you use. So we have a custom package where we have analysts who are writing those reports that are sort of like that, luxury model of the assessment reports. And then we have computer generated assessments as well. So packages are based on that. I don't know if I'm seeing her on here to answer that.
I remember now what we said last time, y'all, because they have so many different packages. What you need to do is simply go to that website, fill out the assessment for yourself. That generates them a lead that they have somebody that's interested. One of their team members will reach out to you to talk with you about your personal goals, your current staffing, your hiring needs, all that kind of stuff. Then they'll present, okay, we think our standard package will be well. I don't know. I don't even want to spit out a price because I don't know. Or they might say, you might be interested in our custom solutions, whatever. So they will reach out to you individually and have that conversation, Brett. So just reach out to them. Bob said over the last few years, and we got to go here in just a second, the last few years, the challenge has been finding fewer and fewer sales candidates who are super motivated by money. Most of them are motivated by being comfortable, and not being stressed out. Y'all, the past few years have been crazy, right? With the pandemic, I mean, y'all, we were paying people hundreds and hundreds of dollars a week to not work. What, y'all remember that? Y'all remember back in the early 2020? Now there's 2 open jobs right now for every 1 candidate. We have a wage price spiral where demands are higher and we have to pay up more. I know that it's been a very, very challenging environment, but you know what? I work with team members every single day all across this country with the agencies that I personally work with and agencies in our program of top performers. Y'all, I talked with a kid yesterday. He's 19 years old. 19 years old. I didn't think that. I asked him, I said, hey, how old are you? Because he was role playing with me. He's only been there for like 3 weeks. He was role playing with me. Awesome. He's already written like 14 items for this agent. I said, how old are you? He said, I'm 19. I said, 19 years old? Dude, you're going to be a 30-year-old millionaire. Seriously, you start making really good money, start saving, investing. You might want to own your own agency one day. Y'all, there are hardworking people out there. There are hardworking people out there who are motivated and driven. Do we have to be a tad more flexible here and there with work-life balance stuff, maybe working from home? Yes. And y'all, we've got hours and hours and hours of training from Justin Slocum on how he's built a remote team. He has over 30 team members, 3 people work in the agency. Everyone else is scattered all across the big state of Texas and some outside of Texas. So it's been a very, very challenging time. That's why we need resources like this to make sure we are picking the absolute best candidates who will likely be a good cultural fit, who will be driven and motivated to win and succeed. So that was my answer to that question. What's your answer to that question? It's hard to find good people these days, huh?
I mean, it is. And it is harder because of the pandemic and all of that, what was created from that event. And it's super frustrating, and we're feeling it too. And even with the tool and all of the tools that we use and the processes that we use, it seems making more mistakes than not because of this new trend of wanting to be so comfortable. And I think that just powering through and looking for the best and not compromising is the best way to go. Because I think there's unfortunately more of that to wade through now, which is just makes our lives harder. So the more tools you can use to make your life as easy as possible, the better. Because at the end of the day, if you do end up having to compromise and hire somebody who maybe isn't that perfect fit, or you feel like might have that little, I want to be comfy all the time, at least knowing some information as that person comes on board, maybe you can help to motivate and manage them a little more effectively from the get-go.
Okay, last question. Santiago wants to know, when someone completes an assessment, how long does it take to come back?
Oh, that's a great question. So the assessment itself it's less than 10 minutes. We just put it down from 5 parts to 3, and it's been mobilized. So it's really easy to take. Everything's more modern, but we have an instant report. So depending on what you use, it's either going to be instantaneous or it's 3 business hours if you're having an analyst written report done. So if you have it into us by 2:30, you'll have it same business day.
Very, very cool. And I want to test something out real quick. I want to see if I can stop the presentation. I did it. And y'all, you might have seen me moving her camera around and doing things. Now I'm playing with different systems. This is our first time using this new software, and I'm kind of digging it. Now, you guys might have been on a CWC webinar before from Zoom, but I just wanted to try this out. Thank you. Thank you so much for taking time to share with us. Thank you for all that y'all do to support members of CWC in their efforts of finding great talent and retaining great talent. Y'all have amazing programs. Guys, I'll tell you, Laura Harris is who introduced them to us. If you don't know Laura Harris, you haven't been around long, I'm guessing. She's been an agent for over 30 years, just won all the awards and everything in Texas. She's an amazing agent. When Laura Harris is behind something and believes in something, that means a lot. I'm so glad she introduced us to y'all a few years ago, because seriously, you are far superior than anything else out there. So I want to encourage y'all, if you're watching this live, if you're watching the recording on the platform or on YouTube, check out Omnia. They're awesome. Any final thoughts from you, my friend?
Just thank you so much. We appreciate your partnership. We love working with all of these clients, and I hope that you'll be giving us a call.
Very good. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, let's get back to work, y'all. It's the last day of the month. Can we squeeze out a few more policies? Right? Let's finish the month strong. Let's get ready for a huge March. If I can help you in any way, feel free to reach out to me, Joseph at CraigWigginsCoaching.com. With that said, let's go, y'all. We got to finish the month strong. I'll see y'all on the next call. Bye-bye.